Today we will talk about Ethernet. This is possibly the most ubiquitous LAN technology today. As a matter of fact, when computer network developed, there were a number of competing LAN technologies, but today Ethernet has come to dominate LAN almost totally, excepting for the newly emerging wireless part, which we will discuss later. This Ethernet, as a matter of fact, not only LAN, nowadays people are talking about Ethernet in the MAN, that is Metropolitan Area Network also. So Ethernet, as you understand, is very important. So we will talk about Ethernet. It is a dominantly a data link layer technology, and the multiple access scheme of Ethernet is CSMA/CD. So we will talk about Ethernet and CSMA/CD. So this will be our first lecture on this. We will continue on this topic in the next lecture also. So what is the broad outline of Ethernet? First of all, it was conceived of as a broadcast network. Okay. So single communication channel that is shared by all the machines on the network. That is the that was the idea. So this would be the kind of medium we will have. So we have a shared medium where everybody broadcasts. So suppose, and one of the common broadcast in the early days, the one of the common physical organization of this Ethernet were some machines which were connected to a coaxial cable. So of course, since this is a LAN technology, unlike the satellite technology that we have talked about, you remember that in satellite technology that is also a shared medium, and there we do sort of send and then detect a collision. So we have discussed that. This is a sort of some further advancement. The multiple access technique of Ethernet is just some refinement toward that, but this is essentially in a LAN environment. That means it is a small geographical area. So small geographical area, and then we have packets. And that means packets are sent over this. This packets is of course framed by the Ethernet, and how it frames it we will see that later on. So short messages sent by any machine are received by all others. Since this is a broadcast network, a message which is sent by any machine are received by all networks, and so naturally you have to give the destination address. So there are various fields in the Ethernet header, and we will look at that later on. But one of them has to be the destination address, that we understand, because otherwise it's the recipients will not know for whom this frame is meant. Okay, so since there is it's a shared medium, so all these machines are supposed to be in the so called same collision domain. Okay, collision, because if two machines are sending simultaneously, their packets will collide anyway. So suppose you have the sender over here, sender has a packet to send, so he puts it on this common bus, the packet travels both ways, and then it is received by all the recipients. All of them copy the frame into their NIC, and then what they do is that they would compare the destination address with their own address. If it is not for them, they will simply ignore it. If it is meant for this node, so he will sort of absorb it and then send it to the higher layer. So all machines receive the packets, but only one would process it. That is the mode of operation is broadcasting. It is also possible to address a packet to a subset of machines. This is called multicasting. Okay, this mode of operation is called multicasting. Multicasting, we have two ends of the spectrum. One is a point to point communication, one sender, one receiver. Okay, and the other end of the spectrum is the broadcast, where one sender and everybody else is a receiver. Somewhere in between is a multicast, meaning that one sender and several receivers. Okay. So, how several receivers can receive it, etc., what do you do? So, obviously you will have to do something with an address, you have to give a very special kind of address, but anyway that is also possible. So, it is possible to multicast, since it is possible to broadcast, it is possible to multicast also, that is not difficult at all. So, if you this is just to remind you about our discussion on the satellite communication which we did. So, if you remember, the satellite communication used a MAC protocol called Aloha, okay, and there were two versions of Aloha. One was the pure Aloha, where if anybody has any data to send, he is simply framed to send, he simply sends it. Okay. If there is a collision, then he waits for collision. If there is a collision, then he would back off and maybe send it again. That is a pure Aloha scheme, and we saw that this is the form of the curve. S is equal to G into E into minus e to the power minus 2G, where S is the throughput. Okay. That means how much you are actually able to communicate successfully, and G are the attempts per packet time. Okay. So, this is the S versus G curve for Aloha, pure Aloha, which is about 18% is the maximum efficiency that you can get. Slotted Aloha, where you can send only in the from the beginning of a slot time, that has a considerably better performance. Even then it comes to about 37%, and the formula is S equal to G into e to the power minus S. Okay. So, what we do in this Ethernet is something similar. That means we broadcast and then we detect collision. So, it should be the same as some kind of Aloha. Only thing is that since this is a local area network, okay, this is a small network. So, what we can do is that we can sense the carrier. That means we can sense whether or not somebody is sending. If somebody is sending, then we refrain from sending anything. All right. So, that is called carrier sensing. Okay. If I think we discussed this earlier, that it is not possible to do carrier sensing in satellites, because the space delay is so high. Okay. Whatever you are listening to now must have happened maybe 250 milliseconds earlier. All right. So, that is a long time back, but that is not the case in case of a small LAN. So, the time frames are much smaller. So, you can actually listen to the medium and find out whether somebody is actually broadcasting something at that particular point of time. In that case, even if you have something to send, you do not. So, that reduces the collision considerably, and that naturally leads to an improvement in the efficiency. So, this scheme is called carrier sense multiple access, and what we will find is that even if you are doing carrier sensing, still there can be some collisions, although there will be reduced number of collisions compared to pure Aloha or slotted Aloha, but still there will be collision. So, you have to detect the collision also, this CD part. So, the full MAC protocol that is used by Ethernet is the CSMA CD. This is the dynamic channel allocation technology, or the I mean sort of random access MAC for this. This was used in old Ethernet. Of course, nowadays we have moved to fast Ethernet. We will discuss this in the next lecture, where we sort of reduce this collision etc., and go over to a switched Ethernet. We will discuss it in the next lecture. So, we have carrier sense multiple access. We improve the performance of our simple network greatly if we introduce carrier sensing. With carrier sensing, each host listens to the data being transmitted over the cable. A host will only transmit its own frames when it cannot hear any data being transmitted by other hosts. When a frame finishes, an interframe gap of about 9.6 microsecond is allowed to pass before another host starts transmitting its frame. So, he listens to it, somebody is sending, and then he naturally waits, and then after that frame is over, he gives a gap of about 9.6 microseconds and then starts transmitting. Now, even if you are doing that, collisions can still occur. Okay? And collisions can still occur mainly because of the propagation delay. Alright, propagation delay means two nodes may not hear each other's transmission. So, and of course, as before, if there is a collision, entire packet transmission time is wasted. And naturally, the distance and propagation delay has a strong role to play in the collision probability. Let us look at this. Suppose now this node B starts transmission at time t0. Okay. Naturally, the transmission goes both towards A as well as towards C and D. So, there is a cone like this which is going, if you plot it against time and over distance. So, there is a cone like this, so over which the B's transmission is going on. Okay. Now, what happens is that C was listening, and at this particular point of time t0 or even later than that, C did not have any carrier to sense, okay, because B's transmission, although it had already started in terms of absolute time, had still not reached C. So, it will reach C only at this particular point of time. If during this period C starts C, or let us say D will reach the the transmission from B will reach D at a much later time, at some time over here, let us say T2 or something. Now, if D starts its transmission T1, what will happen is that somewhere in between they are going to collide, and these garbled bits will now start propagating on both sides, which is shown in this hashed figure. Alright. So, what happens is naturally B's transmission is lost and D's transmission is also lost. So, there will still be a finite probability of a collision, and this probability will depend on the time it takes for the frame to reach all the nodes, because if it had reached some other node, then that particular node would not start transmitting, but it takes a finite amount of time, and within that finite amount of time, if somebody else starts transmitting, then you have a collision. So, we will we can still have collision. So, we just CSMA is not enough, we have to do CD also. So, CSMA, as we mentioned, listen before transmit, if channel is sensed busy, defer transmission, and persistent CSMA means retry immediately when channel becomes idle. This may cause instability. Okay. But this is called persistent CSMA, that means retry immediately when channel becomes idle, because what might happen is that during the time when a frame is being sent, that may be a considerable amount of time, and during that time more than one node may become ready to transmit. Okay. Now, if more than one node becomes ready to transmit, naturally all of them will pounce on it after giving that 9.6 microsecond gap, all of them pounce on it and start transmitting, and naturally they are going to collide. If they collide, they sort of know that it is bad, so they allow that collision to subside, and then they start again, and by this time quite a lot of time has elapsed, somebody else may become ready and somebody else may again starts persisting. So, this may grow. So, this may grow to some kind of instability. So, being totally persistent about this is not very good, as we will see the performance of each of these, but that is persistent CSMA. We call a strategy as P persistent, that means we retry in the next immediate available some time with a probability of P, which means that with the probability of 1 minus P we do not persist, that means we sort of defer still more. Okay. And then there is a non-persistent CSMA, that if somebody is ready to send something, finds that it is busy, then he will retry only after a random interval. So, he generates some random numbers and decides by itself to wait for this random amount of time. So, that is non-persistent CSMA. Okay. Collisions may still exist since two stations may sense the channel idle at the same time or within a vulnerable window, which is equal to the round trip delay. We mentioned this. So, in case of collision, the entire packet transmission time is wasted. So, we have pure aloha. So, this is all a group of protocols really. We have pure Aloha, then we have slotted Aloha, then we have persistent CSMA, then we have p-persistent CSMA, non-persistent CSMA, and here is how they behave. Pure Aloha, so these two curves we have already seen, pure Aloha and slotted Aloha used in satellite communication, because we cannot do carrier sensing over there because of the significant space delay. If you do carrier sensing, this improves, but if you are persistent, one persistent, that means or in other words this is purely persistent. So, if it is persistent, then the performance improves somewhat, so it maybe goes slightly above 50% and then comes down. If you make it, now you can have different values of p. P, remember, is the probability that the node will try immediately when it senses that the channel is available. So, that it will do that with probability 0.5, the probability of 0.5 it will not try at all. So, that is 0.5 persistent CSMA, that is still better. 0.1 persistent CSMA is even better. That means that what it will do is that with 0.1 probability it will try, and with 0.9 probability it will sort of defer it still further. If it is non-persistent, okay, this is the non-persistent, so this is 0.01 persistent CSMA and this is non-persistent CSMA. Okay, non-persistent means it will always go back. Okay. So, if you I mean sort of draw the throughput versus load kind of curve, this is the kind of curve you get, but the exact throughput etc. will depend on how many nodes are there and what their distances are, etc., etc. These are somewhat idealized figures, but anyway something like this you will get. As you can see that with non-persistent or something very low persistent CSMA, we get very high throughput even when the load is going up. So, when the load is going up, it is not falling down steeply like Aloha or slotted Aloha. So, this is the channel utilization by the various MAC protocols. So, CSMA CD is carrier sending, deferral as in CSMA, collision detected within short time, colliding transmissions aborted, reducing channel wastage. Collision detection, of course, easy in wired LANs, measure signal strengths, compare transmitted and received signals. So, this is how you measure sort of detect a collision. It is somewhat a bit more complicated in wireless LANs. Okay, so we will discuss wireless LANs later on, as but the receiver is usually shut off while transmitting. So, this is a problem with the wireless LANs where carrier collision detection is difficult. So, we go for some other kind of scheme over there which is called collision avoidance. So, we will discuss it later. So, Ethernet, as I mentioned, is the dominant LAN technology, and since this is dominant, what the sort of people who followed the Ethernet line, they had the great advantage of having a huge market, and that really drove down the cost, and today Ethernet is really cheap. Okay, it's I mean it's Ethernet network interface card will be in the order of some maybe $20 or something of that order. So, it is really quite cheap for a 100 Mbps card, which is quite fast actually. First widely used LAN technology, it's simple, it's simpler and cheaper than token LANs and ATM. So, that is a very great advantage, and it kept up with speed race, which is the 10, 100 or 1000 Mbps. So, now people are, I mean Ethernet started with 10 Mbps, then the people went on to 100 Mbps, which is very standard today, and then now people are talking about 1000 Mbps or 1 gigabit Ethernet, which is also becoming I mean sort of started making inroads into the backbones of LANs, etc., and now maybe in a couple of years time it will go into the desktop also, if it has not already reached some desktop. So, Ethernet really is that way very widely used technology. So, this is just a diagram to show you the original way how Ethernet looked. So, you had a cable which would be terminated on two sides which would be tapped, and then there will be a transceiver will tap into it, sort of connect it. There will be an interface cable from the transceiver to the interface of the controller. So, this is basically the NIC, and this is how it will be connected. Various machines would tap into the cable at various points of time. So, this is the so called ether. So, now we go into the details of this, how exactly this is done. We have discussed the basic technology already, but we will just now this thing. So, Ethernet uses a bus topology, so it assumes a bus topology, carrier sense multiple access, and in CSMA/CD each station has equal access to the network, but it can broadcast only when the network is idle. Before transmitting, a station listens to the network to sense if another workstation is transmitting, which is carrier sense. If the network is still idle after a certain period, the station will transmit. It is possible that two stations will listen and sense an idle network at the same time. So, each will then transmit a message which will collide. While transmitting, a station must perform collision detection to detect if its message was destroyed. If a collision is detected, the detecting station broadcasts a collision or jam signal to alert other stations that a collision has occurred. Each transmitting station then waits a random amount of time ranging from 10 to 90 milliseconds before attempting the transmission again. So, this is the same algorithm step by step. Adapter gets datagram from the network layer and creates a frame, that means it adds header etc. to create a frame. If adapter senses channel is idle, it starts to transmit frame. If it senses channel busy, waits until channel idle and then transmits. If adapter transmits entire frame without detecting another transmission, the adapter is done with the frame. If adapter detects another transmission while transmitting, aborts the transmission and sends some jam signal. Okay. So, so this is one interesting point, which is that it need to detect collision only while it is transmitting. So, after the transmission is over and then there is no detection within that frame transmission time, then you can forget about collision. That means, just some time after that you may still detect a collision. That collision would be presumed to be due to somebody else, not for your frame, because if you detect a collision, if you have already sent a frame and then you detect a collision, you have to sort of understand that was it your frame which sort of collided, or was it your frame went through all right and then somebody nearby started transmitting, maybe two stations, and they collided. So, you have to understand that. So, the idea is that only while you are transmitting, so that time should be enough for any collision, any inadvertent collision to happen. So, we will come back to this point. So, if there is a collision, it aborts. After aborting, adapter enters in exponential backoff algorithm. And what is this exponential backoff algorithm? What might happen is that the frame it has sent might have collided, then it might have backed off for some time, it may have tried again and again it might have collided, maybe network is very busy. Okay. Now, what is the remedy if the network is very busy? Obviously, if the network is very busy, what is going to happen is that more and more people will try to sort of send, and then they will fail and then they will try again. Okay. So, this may bring down the overall throughput, you remember the throughput versus this thing. So, overall throughput of the system to a large degree. So, what is done is that if the network is busy, everybody tries to make the network less loaded, which means that they wait for longer before they try to send it. So, what they do is that they sort of generate this random number over an exponentially increasing period, so that the probability of a higher random number becomes more and more if the network is more loaded, which means that you are backing off for a larger amount of time. That is exponential backoff. So, after the mth collision, adapter chooses a k at random from 0, 1, 2 to 2 to the power m minus 1. Okay. So, if m is 10, so it chooses a random number between 0 to 1023. Now, adapter waits k equal to 512 bit times and then returns to step 2, which is, that means suppose k is 100. So 100 into 512 bit times, how much is 512 bit times, we will see that. So that much it waits and then it tries again. So jam signal, it makes sure that all other transmitters are aware of the collision. We send a jam signal when it detects a collision. And back off, so bit time is, so how much does it back off, let us see. So bit time is 0.1 microsecond for a 10 Mbps Ethernet. For k is equal to 1023, so if you remember 512 into 0.1, so 512 bit times would be about 51.2 microsecond, and 51.2 microsecond into 1023 will be approximately 50 milliseconds. Okay. So that is a, so it waits for 50 milliseconds if k happens to come out as 1023. So the idea of this exponential back off, the goal is to adapt retransmission attempts to estimated current load. Heavy load means random wait will be longer. Once again, we do this because if the load is heavy at some particular point of time, then people in general should refrain from sending so that the load comes down, because if the load is kept high and everybody starts tries to transmit, then there will be even more collision and even less throughput than what you would achieve by a number of people backing off. So this backing off is done exponentially. So first collision, choose k from 0 1 and delay is k into 512 bit transmission time, which means that with 50% probability you will try to transmit immediately, with 50% probability you would back off for this k into 512, that is 51.2 microseconds, before listening and trying to send again. After second collision, choose k from 0 1 2 3. So the n is increasing, alright, the number of collisions is increasing. After 10 collisions, it is not allowed to increase more than that. So this this range of k becomes fixed and you always choose from this 0 to 1023. So this is the exponential back off algorithm for heavier load. Presumably a node will choose a larger k and wait for longer, reducing the load on the system and increasing the throughput. And this CSMSCD system can be in one of the three states. There may be contention, okay, there may be successful transmission, or it may be idle. So all these things, so there may be contention slots or frames or idle period. Now this IEEE 802.3 sort of defines of course this Ethernet protocol. If you remember our 802.2, that was that LLC, and then 802.3 we have this CDMA, and 802.4, 5 etc. we have already discussed, like token bus, token ring etc. Although there are a couple of variants of Ethernet, one is IEEE 802.3 and the other is called Dixie Ethernet. We will maybe we will mention it later on, but more or less they are the same excepting for very minor difference. So 802.3 is the more dominant one these days. Now so besides, so this is a standard, of course. This 802.3 is the number of the standard, and this standard also describes the format of the frames and the type of encoding used for transmitting frames. So it also describes what the frame format is and what kind of encoding is used for transmitting frame. The minimum length of frames can be varied from network to network. This is important because depending on the size of the network, the frames must be of a suitable minimum length. Okay. So why this is so? You remember that a node has to detect collision only during the transmission time. Okay, if it is transmission is over and there has been no collision has been detected, it assumes that its own frame has reached whatever destination it was supposed to reach. After that, if there is a collision, it is supposed to be between two other nodes which other people, because once there is a collision only the sender would know. This is important because once there is a collision only a sender would know which whether his own frame has collided, because you cannot really decipher the address fields etc. so long of the collided frames. The collided frames are gone, they are garbled. The standard also makes some suggestions about the type of cabling that should be used for CSMA/CD bus LANs. Now, this minimum time is which may vary from system to system, that means a network to network. So, this is how it is calculated, and first of all let us see how the minimum time would come. So, suppose this is the shared bus, we put two nodes at the two extreme ends. Suppose now packet starts at over here at time t equal to 0, packet is almost reached B at time t minus epsilon, at which point of time so suppose this transmission time, propagation time of the, not transmission time, the propagation time of the packet from one end to the other, suppose that is tau. So at tau minus epsilon it has almost reached B. At that point of time B starts transmitting, because B all this while has been finding that the bus have been very quiet, there is no signal on it, so B can start transmitting. So B starts and there is a collision, and this collision is at this end of the medium. So now the collision bus starts travelling back, the jam signal and all that, so that starts travelling back. So it again takes a time almost tau to reach A. So the total time is 2 tau noise. So collision detection can take as long as 2 tau. So the point is that your transmission time has to be greater than this 2 tau. Okay. There are a few other issues, we will discuss that later. So this is what we were discussing, minimum frame length. To ensure that no node may completely receive a frame before transmitting node has finished sending it, Ethernet defines a minimum frame size, that is no frame may have less than 46 bytes of payload. Okay. So what happens if that means 46 bytes is the minimum payload. Payload, remember, is the packet which the data link layer received from the upper layer. Now what happens if the packet is much smaller? I mean the application itself is such that you just have to send maybe one yes no kind of one character or two characters. Then what happens to it? Well, Ethernet does not allow less than 46 bytes, so you have to pad it up. Okay, we will come to that later on. So the minimum frame size is related to the distance which the network spans, the type of media being used, because how much time it takes for this signal to travel, and the number of repeaters which the signal may have to pass through to reach the farthest point of the LAN. Why is that so? Well, repeater, if you remember, is something which enhances a signal. As a signal travels down a transmission line, it tends to get weaker and weaker because of attenuation. So at some particular point of time, the signal may have to be amplified. So a repeater does just that. So it takes down the incoming signal and amplifies it, maybe some wave shaping or something. So there may be a number of repeaters. Now what would happen is that each of these repeater might introduce some delay, because the repeater, it will not go through instantaneously, there will be some delay in this repeater, and if there are a number of repeaters, so this delay would get added. So remember what we are trying to find out. We are trying to find out that a packet which is sent from one end of the network, when it reaches the other end, and then maybe at that almost at the other end there is a collision, and that collision comes back, what is this total time? Okay. So during this whole total time, this packet must be transmitting, because it will detect the collision only during the packet transmission time. So the number of repeaters is also important, as are the type of media and the distance to the farthest point of the LAN. Together these define a value known as the Ethernet slot time, corresponding to 512 bit times at 10 Mbps. the longest time between the starting to transmit a frame and receiving the first bit of a jam sequence is twice the propagation delay from one end to the cable of the other. If there is, I mean, if that is the only thing there is there, if there is no repeaters, if there are repeaters, you have to put that in also. This means that a frame must have enough bits to last twice the propagation delay. The 802.3 CSMA-CD bus LAN transmits data at the standard rate of R equal to 10 Mbps. So, this was the earlier standard of 10 Mbps. The speed of a signal propagation is about 2 into 10 to the power 8 meters per second in this coaxial cable. So, cable may be of 400 meter length, transmission speed is equal to 10 megabits per second. So, propagation speed is 2 into 10 to the power 8 meters per second. Let us see what the delay is and what the minimum frame size comes out to be. So, propagation delay time is T prop. The round trip propagation delay is of course twice this. The number of bits we can fit into a round trip propagation delay is the minimum frame length NB. So, T prop would be the distance divided by V, the velocity. So, velocity is 2 into 10 to the power 8 and distance is 400 meters. So, which makes it 2 into 10 to the power minus 6 second, or rather 2 microsecond. So, twice T prop, that means for the signal to travel all these 400 meters and come back is 4 microsecond. Now, so the 4 microseconds, so all these 4 microseconds the transmitting station must go on transmitting, and the transmitting station is pumping data at the rate of R is equal to 10 Mbps. So, a bit time, the time to transmit one bit is 1 by R is 1 by 10 megabits, which is 10 into 10 to the power 6, which is 10 to the power 7, which is 0.1 microsecond. So, sorry. So, the number of bits, which the minimum number of bits the frame must have is 2 into Tp divided by Tp. Tp is the propagation delay, 2 into Tp for the round trip propagation delay divided by Tb, which is 4 divided by 0.1, which is 40 bits. Okay. So, this calculation brings us to 40 bits. Of course, as I said that the minimum size is much bigger than 40 bits, and we will see why. So, the minimum frame length is thus 40 bits or 5 bytes. A margin of error is usually added to this, often to make it a power of 2. So, we might use 64 bits or 8 bytes. Let us see another example. This is calculating something else, but very closely related. Two nodes are communicating using CSMA-CD protocol. Speed of transmission is 100 megabits per second. So, this is a fast Ethernet, and frame size is 1500 bytes. The propagation speed is 3 into 10 to the power 8 meters per second. So, that is the speed of light. Okay. So, calculate the distance between the nodes such that the time to transmit the frame equal to time to recognize that the collision have occurred. So, we want to calculate now the distance. Now, the distance is not given. So, the same thing, since frame time is given, we calculate the propagation delay from this. So, T round trip, which is equal to the T frame, is equal to 2 into T prop. So, T prop is equal to T frame by 2, and what is the T frame? That is the time to, you remember, just if I go to the previous slide once again, we have a 1500 bytes which is being pumped at the rate of 100 megabits per second. So, so 1500 bytes. So, if you multiply 1500 bytes into 8, that means how many bits? So, you will get 12,000 bits, which is 1.2 into 10 to the power minus 4. That is 6 into 10 to the power minus 5. The maximum distance is calculated using the propagation velocity. So, T prop is equal to d by v. So, d is equal to T prop into v. 6 into 10 to the power minus 5 into 3 into 10 to the power 8, which is 18 into 10 to the power 3, which is 18 kilometer. Now we can have, I mean, with this kind of minimum frame length you can go up to 18 kilometer. Remember, now the minimum frame size has become 1500 bytes. The standard frame length is at least 512 bits or 64 bytes long, which is much longer than our minimum requirement of 64 bits, which is 8 bytes. We only have to start worrying when the LAN reaches lengths of more than 2.5 kilometers. 802.3 CSMA/CD bus LANs longer than 500 meter are usually composed of multiple segments joined by inline passive repeaters. Okay. As I said that as a signal travels down a transmission line, what would happen is that it will become weaker, so you will have to put a repeater. Okay. And one kind of repeater may be called a hub. Okay. Hub may be a repeater, so we will come to that later. So, so we inline passive repeaters which output on one cable the signals received on another cable, or we may simply have an amplifier over there. When we work out the minimum frame length for these longer LANs, we also have to take the delays caused by the passive repeaters. Now, each passive repeater introduces a delay of about 2.5 microsecond each into account as well. So, let us say we have these 500 meters on each segment. So, we have 4 repeaters, so 5 segments. Okay. So, I mean that is about the maximum you should go. Of course, nowadays we do not even use such coaxial cables, we will come to that. So, so what happens is that 64 bytes sent at 10 Mbps would take 64 into 8 is 512 bits. So, 512 bits at 10 Mbps is 51.2 microsecond. And then 500 meter per segment, 4 repeaters between the nodes. So, so that means there are 5 segments, so 2500 meters in all. So, this gives rise to 25 microsecond propagation delay. Why 25 microsecond? Because if you remember that our propagation velocity is about 2 into 10 to the power 8. So, if you calculate it, it comes to about 12.5 microsecond from one end to the other, twice that is about 25 microsecond. The frame should be long enough for the sender to detect the collision in 2 into 25. So, this is 125 and the other 25 is these 4 repeaters together. So, that is introducing some other this thing. So, about 50 microseconds. Alright. So, 50 microseconds, 64 bytes sent at 10 Mbps is 51.2 microsecond. So, if you have a frame length of 64 bytes that is quite good. That is all right. Now, let us look at the details of the Ethernet frame. All information on an Ethernet network is organized into frames, also called packets, or maybe packet is what the upper layer gives, and then this is formed into a frame. Contents of an Ethernet frame. Sending adapter encapsulates IP datagram or other network layer protocol packet in Ethernet frame. So, this is what the Ethernet frame looks like. We have a preamble of 7 bytes, we have a startup frame of 1 byte, we have a destination address of 6 bytes, we have a source address of 6 bytes, we have frame length of 2 bytes, and then data which may vary from 46 to 1500 bytes, and then followed by CRC. CRC of 4 bytes. CRC, if you remember, is the cyclic redundancy code which Ethernet uses for error detection on the other side. So, you have actually 7 plus 1 8 plus 6 14 plus 6 20 22 plus 4 26 plus the minimum. So, this comes to about 72 bytes, which is even larger than the 64 bytes. So, even for the so 64 so this is all right. So, we require 46 bytes is the minimum and 1500 bytes is the maximum length of the payload. This is the payload part. To this you have to add this header and trailer part. In the trailer you have the CRC, in the header you have the source address, destination address, etc. This frame length is required because if you can, you might have padding over here. There is also in some other version of the Ethernet there is a type field over here which gives the network layer protocol type. So, let us look at the details quickly. Sending adapter encapsulates IP datagram in Ethernet frame. Preamble: 7 bytes with pattern 10101010. Please note that 1s and 0s are alternating and there is a reason for that, followed by 1 byte with pattern 101011011. So, these 7 bytes are called the preamble. This 101011011, this is the start of frame delimiter. 7 byte of pattern, this 10 is required, used to synchronize receiver and sender clock rates. So, that is why we alternate this 1 and 0, etc. Then we have an address of 6 bytes. If adapter receives frame with matching destination address or with broadcast address, for example an ARP packet, it may be broadcast or it may be multicast or it may be unicast, even then actually this frame would be broadcast, only one would come up. What is ARP, which is address resolution protocol? We will discuss this in the next lecture. So, it passes data in frame to net layer protocol, otherwise adapter discards the frame. So, this is address has to be there, so destination address, source address is also put over there. Type, as I said that in some form the type is there, field is there, it indicates the higher layer protocol, mostly IP, but others are maybe supported such as Novel IPX and AppleTalk. So, what type of network layer protocol is it talking to? So, the same Ethernet, this I mentioned before, that the same data link layer protocol may be supporting a number of network layer protocol. In that case there has to be multiplexing and demultiplexing. So, on the receiver side when a packet comes, maybe this data link layer knows that this is for this particular machine because its address is there, so it will absorb it, but then send it. If there are two different network layer protocols which are running at the same time, to whom will it send it? So, that type is mentioned in the field, so that it can do a demultiplexing properly. CRC is cyclic redundancy code checked at receiver. If error is detected, the frame is simply dropped. The other thing to understand is that this network, Ethernet gives you a unreliable connectionless service. So, it is connectionless, no handshaking between sending and receiving adapter. So, it is connectionless. So, the sender simply sends some packet and there is no handshaking between the two. Okay. Unreliable. Why is it unreliable? Well, the actual reliability, whether there will be error or not, will actually depend on the quality of the cable, the quality of connections, whether all standards have been followed very meticulously, and the quality of this thing, etc., and the ambient noise and all these kinds of things. That is not what we are talking about. It is unreliable in the sense that whatever that physical layer parameters are there, they are given, okay, to the network layer, but to the data link layer, that is the Ethernet layer. But the Ethernet does not really try to take any special care to see that the communication is reliable. It adds a CRC, sure. So, on the other side, if the receiver sees that the CRC shows some error, then it may drop that packet. But the sender, it does not send any acknowledgement to sender. So, the sender does not know about it. So, if that packet is dropped, that frame is dropped, simple. So, if that has to be handled, it only may be handled at a higher layer. So, it is unreliable in that sense. Receiving adapter does not send ACKs or negative acknowledgements to sending adapter. Stream of datagrams passed to network layer can have gaps. Gaps, that means some of the frames may have been dropped. So, gaps will be filled if application is using TCP. This is one kind of transmission protocol which we will discuss later, which tries to take care of such errors. Otherwise, application will have to handle these gaps. Maybe the application does not bother about small gaps here and there. Okay. Now just a couple of words about the addresses. you remember that there are 6 byte addresses. So, every network card in the world has a unique 46 bit serial number called a MAC address. So, we are talking about the Ethernet. So, there is a 46 bit. So, 46 bit so 2 to the power 46 is about 64 trillion, okay, which is a very large number, okay. And these numbers, so these addresses are distributed by IEEE, and whichever manufacturer, suppose I am a manufacturer, hardware manufacturer who manufactures Ethernet NIC, that means Ethernet network interface cards. So, what I will do is that I will apply to IEEE and get a whole chunk of addresses, whole block of addresses, and I will go on putting these addresses one by one into the network cards that I produce and then sell it to the market, okay. So, what might happen is that one of my network cards may have gone to India, the next network card may be it is being used in Brazil, okay, it may so happen. So, the network cards that we have, it is not that the network addresses in the LAN will have very contiguous addresses, they may not, okay. But anyway, what is guaranteed is that since this is distributed centrally from IEEE, so no two addresses, that is no two MAC addresses of two network interface cards or two Ethernet cards are going to be the same, okay. So, they are all going to be distinct, because we have all this spool of 64 trillion addresses, and the so that is enough address to distribute. So, that is being distributed by IEEE. So, IEEE allocates these numbers to network card manufacturers who encode them into the firmware on their card. So, it is almost in the hardware, it is encoded into the firmware in the card. The destination and source address fields of the MAC frame have 48 bits set aside. You remember 6 bytes each, 48 bits. So, there are 2 bits discrepancy, this 2 bits is used for something, I will come to that. The standard also allows for a 16 bit address, but these are rarely used. Now, these 2 bits, the most significant bit is set to 0 to indicate an ordinary address and 1 to indicate a group address. This is for multicasting, which means that frames are sent to several hosts. You remember that in the beginning of the lecture we said that although the medium is broadcast, usually there will be one sender, one receiver, so that is an unicast, that means one sender, one receiver. Sometimes you may have a broadcast, that means it is meant for everybody, and sometimes you may have a multicast, that means it is meant for a few of the hosts in the network, not for all. Now, how do you do that? How do you indicate the address? Now, you indicate a very special address starting with a 1, all right. So, this is for multicasting. If all 48 bits are set to 1, then the frames are broadcast. So, all of the also for the destination field, if all bits are 1, that is a very special address. This is not the address of any particular machine. This is going to match with any Ethernet address on that particular LAN. So, if 2 most significant bits are both 0, then the 46 least significant bits contain the MAC addresses of the source and the destination host. So, this is how you make out. So, this is connectionless, this is unreliable in the sense that this does not take any special care for reliability, and then this is also non-deterministic network. This means that no host is guaranteed to be able to send its frame within a reasonable time, just a good probability of doing so. So, you see theoretically what might happen is that you might try to go and find that it is busy, then again you come back and then go, it might collide, next time you come back again it might collide, and this might happen ad infinitum theoretically, alright. Although the probability of happening it a large number of times becomes lower and lower. So, with a very good probability you will be able to send it, but there is no hard and fast guarantee that within this time you will definitely be able to send your frame. So, when the network is busy, the number of collisions rises dramatically and it may become very difficult for any host to transmit their frame. which makes it may not be absolutely suitable for a real time computing application, at least this bus type network. It may not be suitable for a real time computing application such as an assembly line, which will demand that data is transmitted within a specified time period. Since the 802.3 bus LAN cannot guarantee this, its use for real time applications may not only be undesirable, but sometimes potentially dangerous. But of course, there are, instead of this bus, there are other ways of very high speed network, and if this thing is low, then the chance of you are not being able to send at all becomes very, very low indeed. And just one last word about the CSMACD efficiency. We will not go into the details of this discussion, but suppose if each station transmits during a contention slot with probability P, the probability A that some station acquires the channel in that slot is A is equal to Kp into 1 minus P to the power K minus 1. So, P is that probability that that particular contention slot is taken by one machine, one node, and 1 minus P is the probability that all the other K minus 1 nodes have not taken them, and that a particular frame that a particular slot is being used that way, that is K into P into 1 minus P to the power K minus 1. So, A is maximized when P is equal to 1 by K with K tending to with P tending to 1 by epsilon, with A tending to 1 by epsilon as K tends to infinity. The probability that the contention interval has J slots in it is A into 1 minus A to the power J minus 1. So, the calculation of channel efficiency would be P, where P is the time that node needs to transmit mean frame and 2 tau is the slot duration. So, P by P plus 2 tau by A, which means that if P is large, that means if you are sending large frame, the channel efficiency increases. As you will see in this slide, that with 1024 byte frames, the channel efficiency is very high. If you send on the small frames, the channel efficiency tends to be smaller. This plot is with the number of stations trying to send. Thank you. With this, we come to the end of this lecture. In the next lecture, we will look at the modern versions of Ethernet, like switched Ethernet, and how different networks are connected together, etc. Thank you. Good day. So, in this lecture we will continue our discussion about Ethernet. So, in this lecture what we are going to do is that, first of all, we are going to have a look at the physical layer of the Ethernet. There is not much to discuss over there, and then we will see that how we are shifting from a shared medium to a switched Ethernet kind of concept, and how speed is increasing, and then a little bit about what Ethernet LAN as a concept, we will talk about it. So, today our main discussion is that Ethernet, the modern Ethernet, that means the how Ethernet has evolved. But before we go into that, we will look at the topology and some of the limitations of the earlier versions of Ethernet. Now, the topology of a network refers to the pattern of workstations, cables, and repeaters. In an Ethernet, there are two primary limitations to the topology: transmission accuracy and end-to-end transmission time.
Hello everyone. So in this lecture we listened about Ethernet, CSMA CD protocols. The lecture was delivered by Professor Sujay Ghosh from Department of Computer Science and Engineering, IIT Kharagpur. अभी तक जो कंप्यूटर नेटवर्क्स में हमने कवर किया दैट इज अबाउट द सिक्योरिटी एस्पेक्ट्स और TCP IP लेयर, OSI लेयर मॉडल. वी लर्नड ऑल दीज थिंग्स. So now about some typical concepts about networks, that is Ethernet, LAN example. Myself Dr. Girdhar Gopal from Sanatan Dharam College, Ambala, Kent. इस लेक्चर में हमने डिस्कस किया द ब्रॉडकास्ट कंसेप्ट्स, CSMA CD प्रोटोकॉल कहाँ यूज होता है, कैसे ये नेटवर्क बनता है, द डिटेल which is you can say another name of Ethernet. So the questions are: explain the concept of broadcast networks. Then we have in CSMA CD network running at 1 Gbps, 1 gigabits per second, over 1 kilometer cable without any repeater, with no repeaters. The signal speed in the cable is 2 lakh kilometer per second. So this is the snapshot of the network given to you. Now you have to calculate what is the minimum frame size in this network. केबल लेंथ, रिपीटर्स, CSMA CD नेटवर्क है, कितनी स्पीड नेटवर्क की है, और सिग्नल स्पीड केबल के अंदर कितनी है. दैट्स a LAN example. Next is explain the efficiency of CSMA CD in detail. Then explain the concept of Aloha and slotted Aloha in Ethernet. These are the two various complementary protocols, you can say. पहले हम Aloha का यूज करते हैं, then we have some limitations and we used slotted Aloha. Define CSMA process in detail and explain various collisions in CSMA. Collision congestion control एक अलग टेक्निक होती है, collision detection एक अलग चीज होती है. ठीक है, so collisions कैसे कैसे होते हैं in CSMA, those you have to explain. So I hope you learned a lot from this lecture, and please get clear your fundamentals by trying these questions by yourself and get them evaluated by your teacher. Thank you.